Are we live? We are live, I think. Yay. Oh, Bridget, thank you everyone who happens to have waited for 15 minutes for this special occasion that I get to interview my friend, Dr. Bridget Cooper. Dr. B, we call her.
Yeah.
And I would like to let people know what we're going to be doing today. And it is about this idea, this new book that you've written. I know you've written, what, 11 of them already?
Eight plus, I guess my dissertation's another one, but I don't ever count that. So we'll go with eight. We'll go with
Oh,
eight.
I like the idea of counting my dissertation as a
Right? You
book.
could count your, it is a book, Doreen. Come on.
It
That's
was.
absolutely a book. Yeah.
I am going to do that.
There
Oh,
you go. You're a
so
published author.
so
Yeah.
it's probably backwards on
No,
the
it's actually
screen.
right. That was right.
Okay, the book,
Yes.
How to Navigate Clocksuckers and Lead a Happy, Abundant Life. And what I did a few minutes ago, I went on my Facebook feed and said, "Hey, clocksuckers, you know what they are?" We're going to find out so that you can lead a happy, abundant life. And I do have a quick bio, which I will go try and find so that otherwise I'll just say, I love you. You're a
Oh,
wonderful
we've
person,
known each other
author.
for a few years. We've had some fun on this, I think, on your show once before, right?
Yes, yes, on the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life
Yeah.
podcast, where you actually, I know a lot about your history, which isn't really what
Right.
today is about, but I'll put a link into that podcast
Yeah.
episode so people can go back and, oh, I'm feeling really some kind of chills on my body because of
Mm,
how much I know you experience trauma and abuse and
right.
look at the beautiful you that's out there changing the world, and that's one of the things I read in your bio,
Right.
one person at a time. So
Right.
I found the
Starting with
bio.
me. Starting with me. Right. I'm looking to change the world one life at a time, but starting with me.
Oh, that's good. My mouth is dry. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let me read it. I can't
Please
find it on my computer,
go
but
for it.
I have something right here. Dr. Bridget Cooper, we also call her Dr. B, is a leadership development expert, facilitator, and coach who helps teams and leaders think and communicate more clearly and strategically so they can work and navigate problems proactively and effectively. TEDx speaker and best-selling author of, oh, this is where you said it, 7 books.
Oh, yeah. That was before this one. Yeah. So 8 books
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
8 books plus her dissertation on communication, conflict, change, and empowerment. And her mission is, just like we said a second ago, is to change the world one life at a time. I said one person at a time, but
Yeah.
I like the idea of one life at a time because
Mm,
it encapsulates so much more than just a box called
right.
person.
Right. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. And I think there's this idea of how are people living? Are they kind of, there's that adage of, are you a human doing or a human being? Right. And that sort of
mhm.
vernacular. So that to me does resonate. So I'm
Yeah.
so excited to be here. And by the way, what I think is really funny, and I don't know if anybody else who's watching this thinks this is really funny, but here we are talking about a book called the book, How to Navigate Clocksuckers, right? Which is about time. And
Yeah.
we're late because we're getting clock sucked into
Um,
technology stuff, right? I thought it was
yeah.
actually like chef's kiss. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect that that happened.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Well,
I love it.
thank you. And I think that points to some of the message today
Mm,
about, what do you do when it's right in front of you? And how do you navigate in a graceful
right,
sort of way? How do I have some backups that I can let you know, we're having some tech difficulties. How do I change all the technology just like
right.
that with grace and ease? Breath and knowing
Right.
my intention, which is one of the things you talk about in the book.
Hmm.
Intention. Oh, my intention is to be with you today,
Right.
and I'm going to make that happen.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's one of the things, when I set out to write the book, which I'll tell you the story about how I got here. But when I started to write the book, I was very clear that a lot of time management books, and it was going to be about time management because that was the origin story of the book, are about the efficiencies, all the checklists and the color coding and all of that. And I've taught classes on time management. My business started off as a professional organizing business. I understand that lay of the land. But I was very clear that this book wasn't about coming from a lens of efficiencies, even though that's one of the lenses that I cover. It's really more about what you said, which is how am I coming to each moment with intention? How am I coming to each moment with presence? And how am I coming to each moment with decisiveness?
Yeah.
And what happens is when our head trash clouds our vision, we then come into all these moments scattered and skittering and jumping from moment to moment, not even paying attention to the moment that we're in. So that breath, as you so beautifully and clearly modeled for everyone, that's a part of it. And so the book is just a toolkit, really, of how do you come to moments with intention, with presence, with decisiveness, and lastly, with efficiency.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Yeah.
put efficiency last because if that's what it was all about, then we lose the human connection, like my heart that just says,
Right.
"Oh, I want to spend time with Bridget. Oh, I got to."
Right.
So
Absolutely.
this also, which takes me back to how why I wanted to highlight you today in my group, which is Find
Thank
Your
you.
Voice and Speak Up, is because my work is more about being present rather
Yeah.
than making speeches and learning all sorts of techniques to
Glitz and glamour. Yeah, exactly.
the
Yeah.
what is it, the power pause and
Hmm.
oh, I didn't pause. Power pause,
Right.
right? I mean, it
Yeah.
is it is effective. But that is part of actually presence is being able to be self-aware enough that
Hmm.
like what you just said a minute ago, when we're skittering around, how do you
Right.
come back, take whatever tools that you will teach us
Yeah.
today to bring yourself back to this now moment and open up with intention,
Hmm.
decisiveness, and presence.
Presence. Yeah, exactly. And efficiencies on the other
And
side of it.
efficiency.
But I think the thing that we're jumping in, but and I may be getting in front of some of your questions, but I think when I think about the book and I think about navigating clocksuckers and living a happy, abundant life, what I think about is that time is passing whether we make the best use of it or not. There's no like, oh, I'm going to hit the pause button until I figure some things out. No, it just keeps going and keeps going, right? And we keep traveling through it. And so being very mindful, as you said, about how we're coming to those moments
Yeah.
allows us to look back on whatever span of time it is and say, I clearly didn't do everything perfectly because no one does, but I was present in more moments than I was absent from.
Mhm.
And so I think this toolkit is really based in that of how do you get kind of out of your own way, because people are like, oh yeah, how do we deal with the clock suckers? And I said, you recognize that the clock suckers are us. Like we're our number one clock sucker.
Ah, yes.
The outside world does a number on us a lot,
Uh-huh.
but the one thing that we're always in charge of is our contribution to the process. And
Mhm.
if the way we're thinking about something or the way we're greeting a moment
Uh-huh.
is allowing for clock suckers to kind of take over, then that's us. That's ours. And I want to empower people to really look at and assess through these tools, how do you mitigate your interaction, your contribution to this clocksucker trend that we have going.
Well, you're right. I do have some questions, but I feel like I'm already
Yeah.
off and running with what you just said. It's just like I so respond to some of the things, like this idea that the the external, we label it and how we interpret it as, bringing fingers into our being and making us do something. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a relationship to time that we have. So I think that what you I keep saying what you will be talking about, but we're
I'm
talking
still
about it
talking about,
right
yeah.
now. But I'll go back to my first question in a moment here.
Yeah.
So I do understand what you're saying, and I hope people got that point is how
Yeah.
we view time itself is it's a relationship, and that relationship uh,
Hmm.
somehow makes a difference on how we manage our lives, live our lives, not just manage, live.
Absolutely.
So my first question.
Let's do it.
You, I think a book is like a baby. It's a
Mm,
birth. It's a process,
yeah.
right? And I'd like to hear, and you mentioned an origin story.
Hmm.
I'd like to hear something about how the book came into, well, I guess first
Being.
conceived.
Yes.
There's a conception,
I mean,
and
those are
then
usually private moments, Doreen, but I will
yes,
share here. Yeah. With your
yes.
viewers. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think so we have to go back in time. So when I first started writing books, and I have my books here that I've written, when I first started writing books, my younger daughter, who just graduated from Syracuse a few weeks ago, she said to me, maybe I might have been on my second or third book. She was probably 9 or so. She came to me and she said, Mommy, you know what you should do? You should write a book and you should call it The Book. Because she was very punny, everything was a pun. Everything was trying to be funny through, wordplay. And I said, okay, that's the worst marketing idea I've ever heard in my life. I don't want to like take the wind out of her sails, but nobody calls a book The Book. Like there's got to be something more to it. And so I kind of like dismissed it as this cute little thing that she was saying. And then she came at me because she's persistent. And I said, okay, baby, what's the book about? And she said, you know how you book time. It's about time. And
Oh,
I thought, huh, okay, well,
ah,
that's a little more interesting, right? I have a little
yeah.
more of a pull on that. But
Uh-huh.
again, I had no interest in writing a book about time management because, again, as we spoke about earlier, I thought about time management books as being about efficiencies, all the things that I had taught in my time management classes that were really based in that part of the studies. And so I went on and I wrote all the other books. And every single time I wrote a book, she would say, well, it's not the book. When are you going to write the book? So fast forward now, many years later, I started writing books in 2013. Now we're at end of 2024, little past midway 2024. And I realized she's going into her senior year at Syracuse. She's going to be graduating.
Uh-huh.
What if I write the book? But what if I don't tell her that I'm writing the book?
Uh-huh.
And I give it to her as a surprise at graduation. So she graduates, I finish the book, we're done with our things, right? Kind of as a closure moment.
Uh-huh.
And so I started writing the book. And then I thought, how can I make it more special? So I invited her friends, her teachers since elementary school, her professors, her coaches, her bosses, her sister, dance instructor, all the things. I invited them to give their perspectives on time. And I put them into the book.
Mm-hmm.
So the origin story has a lot of layers to it, right? On
Yeah.
how we got to this moment and got to the book. So when I look behind me, I have the book, but next to it, I have what I excerpt out of the book, which is just those nuggets of wisdom that other people had, other than my voice, shared in what they think about time.
Uh-huh. And they were all connected to her.
Yeah, all connected to her. Yeah, and we kept the surprise all the way through. She was surprised at graduation, so that was very exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
What a gift for her, but also the people who also contributed and
right.
have their voices in the book. And
Yeah, and more than that, even Doreen, like one of the things that I noticed was in their telling of the story, a number of them came to me and said, in order to write about this, I had to work through some issues I was having with my battle with time. So, in order to get to this moment and to be able to share the thing I'm sharing, I had to go through a journey of my own and reflecting about my own experience of time. So, there was like this microcosm of growth that was happening just in the invitation itself.
Wow.
So I loved that.
Yeah.
It was so, and some of those people shared that directly with my daughter when she went to present them with their copy of the book after the
Uh,
fact. And it's just that yeah, it's just that ripple effect, I think, when we do
mhm.
something like that.
Well, that's so you. That goes back
Yeah.
to when I described you or we read the bio today, which was one life at a time. And so by asking them to share something like that, and they say, wow, it was a self-discovery, maybe even self-empowerment process for them. And that's what you're
Correct.
all about.
That is it. That is it. So yeah, so it was like this,
Uh-huh.
this moment of having something special and kind of completing something. And again, in recognizing, I'm very much on the passage of time in ceremony, which is, I think, a lot of cultural and religious traditions. That's how you mark this transition between then
Mhm.
and now and then and next. And I've always done that with time, that I've marked, I've had very big ceremonies around the passage of time. And so the book was this kind of meta experience of marking the passage of time of not only her graduation, but
Yeah.
really my kind of empty nesting like piece of
Oh.
those two intersections of time coming together
Mhm.
and having people that have been with her along her journey to this point reflect on it. So it was like there were so many different layers to it that I think are great. And a person reading the book knows as they go through it that that's what's happening, but they don't know those people and they don't know my daughter, but it doesn't matter because they're just people's reflections and people's processing of time. And so it still feels like a familiar friend sharing a piece of their wisdom and their insight and their struggle.
Wisdom,
Yeah.
insight, and struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we're about. Well, the second question is, I mean, when I use that phrase, I've used it a couple times as I've been promoting your book, Clocksuckers. I mean, you know what that brings up for everybody. But so how did you come to that? That's an idea
Yeah.
that
So I
must
was
have
looking.
popped.
Yeah, it did pop. So I knew I was going to call it the book because that was my promise. But I also knew that's not where it needed to stand. Like I had to have some sort of subtitle that communicated what I was delivering because that's the
Mhm.
author's promise is what is in this book that I can be guaranteed to receive as a result of buying it. And so I wanted to make sure that I delivered on that promise. So the subtitle didn't come forward until most of the book was done
Wow.
because I needed to figure out, like, I kept going in all these different directions as to how I was going to do it. And I kept boiling it down and boiling it down. So the introduction, the conclusion were the very last things I did.
Hmm.
So it wasn't until I got all the meat of the book in and could really see how it had taken form that I could then go back and look at the creating a frame for the reader of the intro and a conclusion. And it was in that and seeing that I was like, I came up with probably 50 subtitles of things that were
Yeah.
catchy or whatever. And I had seen the word clocksucker before. I'd screenshotted it and I'd seen it in like
Yeah.
different memes and whatever. And
Hmm.
I thought, could I? Yeah, I could. I could definitely do that because I thought that's so it says everything that you'd want to say about what it is that people battle with. And from a marketing perspective, it's not about me selling the books because anybody who is an author, unless you're on, you've got multi-million dollar contracts or whatever, you're not making a lot of money off of books.
Right.
That's not where I'm focused. I'm focused on the message. I'm focused on the learning. I'm focused on
Yeah.
the lessons. And so to me, anything that stops somebody for a minute to give themselves another, because of our short attention spans, another heartbeat
Yeah.
to read it again, to really see, is this what I'm looking for?
Uh-huh.
Then I've gotten someone to pause for a moment and say, do I want to invest my time and my money in figuring out what this woman has to offer me? And my hope is that they say yes, like resounding yes, because
Yeah.
that's what they have in their lives. So that it was like a way of seeing the reader and also knowing the reader in terms of our attention spans. And I needed them to
Mm.
give it a second look. And a word like clocksucker makes you because you're looking for that L. You're making sure
Yeah.
that that L is in there, and
Uh-huh.
HR is making sure that L is in there, and you know, all of it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a wonderful explanation
Thank
about
you.
how it came. And it was a process too, I get. It wasn't just
Yeah.
something that you started with. And
Right.
I like the idea that you said that it was relational, that it had
Hmm.
something to do with, and what you said about the book in its title, for anybody who's listening and who's a writer, is that you're promising the reader something.
Yeah.
And I think that, but also you, at the same time, you have to say something that goes, oh, to them. Yeah, I do want this. You have to catch the attention. So that was a
Correct.
great explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you're talking about lessons. Let's move
Mm.
into the book itself. We don't want to go
Do
give
it.
all away, but we already know the importance of what you talked about in terms of
Mm.
attention, decision, or presence and decision
Hmm.
making and efficiency, but we won't go there today because
Yeah.
we know it. If you do those first three, it will lead to efficiency if
Correct.
that's what you're wanting. But
Yeah.
I think the others lead more to what I might want. I mean, I don't know about efficiency. For me, it's the value. What
Right.
I value and what really speaks to me when I look at your list there, intention, decisiveness is a little harder for me, but
Mm.
presence. So if you
Right.
want to pick any of those, and
Yeah.
eventually we're going
Well,
to go to presence, but
I love it. Yeah. So I want to just give one kind of comfort statement about efficiencies. The reason that it ended up at the back and that I didn't demand someone's attention to it in the beginning
mhm,
was because to me, in order to really reap the benefits of efficiencies,
yeah,
you have to have the other parts. It's
yes,
not that they aren't important because they are very important. Because if decisive and intentional and you have presence, but then you don't do any of the things that efficiencies require, you may not be the greatest shepherd of your time. You may not be embracing the fleeting nature of it in the way that might be helpful. So they're very integral to the process, but they come at the back because if you're just focused on being efficient,
uh,
you're not necessarily being focused on being effective and values based. And those other pillars require you to be somewhat values based in order to get to efficiencies and use those tools the right way.
I'm glad you said that because, and just going to take a
Yeah.
little tangent and point to the work that I do around speaking in
Yeah.
a way that's more authentic. And
Mm-hmm.
people think they have to get the right words, they have to do all the performance techniques, but it's
Right.
really much more about presence and
Mm-hmm.
being able to be mindful and be able to self-regulate so you don't get to the most impact you can make until you've done these other kind of things rather than just focusing on the message, you're focusing on the messenger.
Right.
So that's a plug for my work, but
I
it
love it.
delves into what you're.
Does.
Okay, doesn't it? Okay, so
Yeah.
let briefly go for each, whatever you
Okay.
want to say on the process, and then I'll have one more question before we
Okay, perfect.
leave today.
So basically, what I did in creating this book was a lot like my process for Unflappable. So, Unflappable is my last book that came out in 2023. And I created tools. There's almost 70 tools in Unflappable that help people understand how to stay or appear calm in any moment and any time. And from those tools, I had to sort them into buckets because I didn't want to just dump them at the reader. I wanted them to see them in some sort of containers within the bigger structure. And some of that was arbitrary in a sense because I could make an argument to put them here or here or
Yes.
here, but I just did that. And I found the same thought process went through me for the book for how to navigate clocksuckers because I could see where this is about decisions, but it's also about presence, but it's also about intentionality. So where do I put it? But I grouped them the best I could in the way that I was thinking about the tool. But I would love to talk with people about how they might have moved one tool here and put it over there. because there's so much overlap between them, because it's hard to have presence when you don't have intentionality. It's hard to be intentional when you don't have presence. It's hard to be intentional and have presence if you aren't decisive about what you're being intentional and having presence about, right? So
Yes.
you can see how they all kind of like, but
Yeah.
anyway, I did it the best I could of sorting them into those buckets,
Mhm.
and then diving into what are the tools that help you to be the most X, Y, Z in those spaces. And so that's what I did, is they're tools. They're 2 or 3, maybe 4-page tools tops, that allow you to take a really quick approach and see how you can be one or more of those things.
Great. Well, I know I want people to go to the book
Yeah.
and read those 4 pages on each one.
Yeah.
I would also like to hear from you what you're bringing it out because you're going to read
I
something.
am. Well, I just bring it out because this is the book test, but it's an open book exam. So it's okay. And we have the book, but keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. No, I was wanting to give people nugget or nuggets,
Right.
however many you want to give, and it's up to you.
Absolutely. So I love that you actually use the word nuggets, because the pieces that are the contributions by the people who are not me are called nuggets. And the
Oh.
reason for that was not only because they're nuggets, because your vernacular, my vernacular goes to that word when we're talking about those little gems that we have inside of a book, but also because it doubled our dog who died in January during the writing of this book. Her name was Nugget.
Oh.
So I
Oh.
also like put
Uh-huh.
that in there, right? Because anybody who's ever been a dog, parent and or sibling knows the lessons you learn from our animals about the fleeting nature of time, about presence, about intentionality. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I thought it was just kind of a really apropos name to call those sections nuggets, but I digress. I think there's one tool right up in the beginning, because one of the initial pieces is frameworks, and it gives the framework and the kind of the baseline for a lot of the other tools. And what I called it was wasting your time, and how we waste our time. And it is coming to moments without those pieces that we talked about before. It's going into those social media rabbit holes, or, just whatever that is, arguing with people who aren't going to listen, all the ways in which we waste time. And
Uh-huh.
I think it's really important for us to, and doubling back to how we started this, is this idea that it's not being done to us, it's being done by us. That we have so much agency. We talk about, oh, social media rabbit holes, and oh, we get lost in our phones, but our phones aren't in charge of us.
Mhm.
Now, they set off some biochemical reactions in us, and we get dopamine addicted, and we do all of these things. So they clearly have an influence over us, but it's our hands that pick up that phone. It's our faces that we put it in front of, right? It's our ways that we put certain settings into our phone to disturb or not disturb us, to ping or not ping us. Those things are things that we're in charge of. So it's really, my base message is around, and I talk about this a lot in all of the books that I've written, is that awareness equals choice, and choice equals power. And when we are aware of the things that are happening within us and happening around us,
Yeah.
then we have more choice on how to address those problems, which then makes us more powerful, not ever over
Mhm.
anyone else,
Mhm.
but over ourselves. And
Mhm.
so all of these tools are geared at increasing our awareness so that we add to our choice and therefore increase our power, our personal
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Awareness leads or equals choice, and choice leads to power. I think
correct.
it was just a phrase that I wanted to
Yeah, it's awareness, and
repeat.
it's in here. It's one of the tools in here,
Uh-huh.
perfectly, and yeah, it's perfectly set in here, because it's so important for us to remember this. So here, it's right here.
Yeah.
Awareness equals choice, and choice equals power.
Yeah.
And it's, for those of you who may pop in and look at my story, my personal journey, you can appreciate how I got here
Yeah.
was because I was raised in an environment where awareness was not something that was rewarded. Choice was not something that I found very frequently, and therefore all of my power was diminished. And if my parents, my caregivers, the people in my surrounding were more aware of their own choice and more aware of their own power, none of those things would have ever happened.
Yeah.
So it's a really pivotal kind of like baseline tool to get to. But do you want me to jump into a little, another little tool that I use that's in here?
Well, if people are listening and I said no, I think they would go, no way. Come on, Doreen.
Come
Ask
on,
her, ask her, ask
do
her.
this, have one. Okay. So I have so many. And so I was trying to pick like people have pick my favorites. And honestly, when I do these book talks, I'll just say like pick a number and then I'll open up a page to
Yeah.
it.
Uh-huh.
But I do want to talk about I think there's one that I think would be really fun for your listeners. And I call it the very best day exercise. And I've had clients use this and have really positive results. And it's anchored in brain science. And
Uh-huh.
it goes like this: our brains are constantly trying to make us right. They're beautiful in being effective and often very efficient at making us correct. So, whatever we set out with for an intention or a focal point or a kind of a search mission, our brains are better than Siri, Alexa, Echo, what have you, at delivering the very thing that we've told it to go look for, which is
Uh-huh.
why, and it's this little part of our brain called the RAS, the reticular activating system. And it is the thing that is responsible for, let's say you say, I would love to drive a red, I don't know, a red Mustang. And all of a sudden, the only thing you see for the next
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 days are red Mustangs. And you're thinking, I had no idea they were such a popular car.
Uh-huh.
They aren't.
Yeah.
What you're seeing is what your brain has been instructed to go find. So
Uh-huh.
we can anchor ourselves in that act by being able to, people talk about the secret and like all of a sudden these things are showing up in my world. Yeah, because you told your brain, just like you told Siri or told Alexa or told whatever, to go find those things, and it's going and finding those things. So the very best day exercise is an exercise that you can use to send your brain on this search mission to find the elements that you want to see in your very best day. And what you do is you anchor yourself in a calm breathe. I saw you even taking that deep
Yeah.
breath to kind
I
of
was
join
I
me
was
in
already
this,
going
right?
in
Yeah.
what is that for me, like the best day.
The very
So
best day. And trying to conjure in whatever way you conjure best, whether it's scent, sight, hearing,
yeah.
touch, taste, whatever that sensation, those sensations are, as many of those sensory experiences as you can conjure. Maybe if it's starting your day off with fresh squeezed orange juice, so you can hear the squeezing, you can smell the orange scent, whatever that is, but really bringing in all of your senses as much as you can and envisioning, what does that very best day include? How are you showing up in it? What is the energy? Is there laughter? Is there reflection? Is it outward? Is it inward? Kind of where are you? And I've had some clients who have said to me, yeah, but mine's on a beach and I work in a city. Okay. But what are the elements about the beach
Yeah. Mhm.
that you felt so good in experiencing? And they said calm, excitement, relaxation, right?
Mhm.
Okay, you can bring those energies to the city.
Yes.
That's how we get at what is it that we're really looking to experience in our everyday lives, and how can we use creating a vision for what the very best day is to be able to bring those things and translate them into and apply them into and embody them in every day that we encounter. So it's a really great exercise to use our brain's supercomputer really to deliver on those promises.
Well, I love that example. And the idea of the beach for me would be a forest, but it would be like I would smell and I
Yeah,
could feel the strength of those trees. It's actually right outside my home.
I
There a
know.
redwood forest that's old growth that's just outside, but it's that kind of, all right, standing grounded. And yeah, I don't have to actually be literally in that forest in order to recreate that sense, I think
Right.
is what you're saying.
Yeah. And it touches on what you just said, touches on another one of the tools, which is this idea that we time travel in our minds. And we can use that for good or
Yeah,
we can use that for bad.
yeah,
And so when we're traveling to a future or a past that has been or
yeah.
we anticipate being really beautiful,
Uh-huh.
our brains don't know that we aren't there.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing because we can create all of those chemical signalings, all using all of our neurotransmitters for all that positive embodiment. And that also means we can do that negatively, which
Right.
means that when we anticipate a negative future or we relive a hard past, we bring our bodies right back into that same chemical sequence that has us reliving that as we go.
Yeah.
So, being able to really dig in and use our brains to create more of that biochemical good stuff is how we want to spend our time.
Yes. That brings up an example again around some work that I've done with,
Mm,
and an example comes up about a fellow who was in grammar school and they had their sex education class, and he asked a
mm,
question about masturbation, and the whole class just really laughed
yeah.
and teased him, and he was kind of
Oh,
laughing stock and bullied from that moment on. And
right.
he came to me with this sense of being so scared to speak in front of people. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the work that I do. So when we, what
Makes
you
sense.
said,
Yeah.
you know, we are, this is what I do in getting at the root. There was the moment that he remembers. So if we
Yeah.
go back there and he just remembers it, then he's recreating in his body. But
Hmm.
if there's a way that together energetically we go back with something like curiosity or compassion, we bring new energy to that memory. And
Correct.
and he then said, my goodness, and I'm getting chills again too.
Yeah.
I was courageous. I was the only one courageous enough to ask that question. And it
Right.
changed that moment. The
Right.
memory of that moment changed because it was an empowering thing as opposed to,
Correct.
right? Is that, oh,
Exactly. Yeah. And that's
yes.
that, that inner child work, that
Yeah.
heart's
Mhm.
work, right? Is that I was bringing people back with more knowledge to then than they could have had to be
Uh-huh.
able to create a different story. And I actually, there's one of the tools in here is called What's Your Story? And
Uh-huh.
it talks about that of how are you narrating the moments of your life? And
Right.
does that narration take into account the features of you that actually could build you into a better version of yourself?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah. And
exactly.
that's what you're doing with your clients. That's what I'm doing with mine. We're
Yeah.
all kind of
Uh-huh.
lifting the world in our own
One
spaces,
life at a time.
one life at a
I,
time.
I'm needing to move on, but I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about one thing personally. Again, this is a little sticky note I have on my computer,
Yeah.
and it did come out of a time when I'm not a procrastinator. I work hard and
Yeah.
I get to done on things. I, but I noticed I was watching Netflix, and I would
Yeah.
say, well, I'm a psychologist. I like to watch people in their, it's all about studying humans, and I knew
Yeah.
it. But at the same time, where I came to, I think, for myself is that even what I'm doing there has value for me. It wasn't
Hmm.
actually what you're talking about because there were other things that were going on like curiosity and fun, or
Right.
it was a comedy, something inside of me. So I said all my moments matter.
Yeah. I love that.
All my moments matter. And so adding what you're talking about today, being more intentional and decisive about and present when I move into whatever
Yeah.
my life is filled with moment every day. Whoa, so many moments.
Look at all the moments. Yeah. And I think it's not to criminalize
Yes.
or demonize
Yes.
Netflix. It's to
Mhm.
say, are you in that moment when you're in it?
Yes.
Because if
Yes.
you're going in there with an intention, whether it's to just have fun or to learn something or to laugh or whatever it is, great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if that's what you did and that's why you did it, then getting to the end of it and then beating yourself up about it,
Yes. That's the point. Yeah.
that's not using the time well. So if that's what you're going to do at the end,
Yeah.
either don't do that at the end, do something else at the end,
Uh-huh.
or choose better before you go in.
Okay.
It's
Well,
like either or. Yeah.
yeah. So now that we are at the end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to, well, wrap it up, say what
Yeah.
comes to you to say just in this now moment to end our time together.
Thank you. Well, so first of all, thank you very much to you and all the people listening or tuning in later. I am really grateful for the time that you invested in spending this today. I hope that you'll pick up a copy if you think this might be something that would be a useful toolkit for you to lean to. There's lots of activities and exercises and things. It's a very applied knowledge kind of thing. And we are all, I want to say this, we are all in the same water, but we are not all in the same boats. And so, so many of us are struggling with one thing or another in a different way than someone else is. And it's one of the things that I try to cover in this book, in the book, is helping people pick up the tools that are important to them so that they can help themselves and therefore help other people. So that's really the message is we're all in this together differently. And hopefully some of these tools help yourself and others in the way that they need that assistance.
Yeah, help you, help yourself, and help others. And it
Yeah.
is about the generosity. And thank you so much for your
Thank you.
generosity today. Lots of goodness, and especially the anchoring again into our connection, our positive connection. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Find your voice.
Yes, you did. Bye bye.
Bye.